We have a major problem with how we ramp new account executives. Your new AEs are being declared ramped at 3 or 6 months, but can they actually run discovery or execute the sales process without you jumping in to save them? Most can't, and that's the problem. Most sales teams ramp reps based on time in seat and not capability-based onboarding where you certify your new sellers. So I built a playbook full of frameworks, implementation roadmaps, and infrastructure guides that cut ramp time in half and have proven to improve win rates by 75%, and it's completely free. So stop this episode right now and go and download the Sales Readiness Playbook at therevenueenabler.com or use the link in the description below. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hit Your Numbers podcast. Today I'm joined by Adam. Hey Adam, how's it going?
I'm good, thanks James. Thanks for having me on.
Looking forward to the conversation. And today we're going to be talking about what separates the winners from the losers. So hopefully going to be an interesting conversation. I know we're going to get into some really good stuff. And Adam, I think the best place for us to probably start, because I was looking at your LinkedIn a little bit earlier, I'd be a terrible sales trainer if I didn't drink my own champagne and do a bit of research. But I'm sure you can tell your story way better than I can. So maybe just give the listeners a really kind of quick 30,000 foot view on who's Adam, what are you up to these days, a bit about your background, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Yeah, totally. I guess very, very high level. Started my career completely far away from sales as a lawyer, and figured out it wasn't for me. Fascinating experience, but I went into sales again, probably like most people, just fell into it. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. Somebody told me I might be quite good at it, and ended up loving it, especially coming from that kind of corporate legal experience where it was just so non-political, meritocratic. Got very lucky with the first company. I landed in a company called Meltwater and exposed to responsibility management, including going out to Tel Aviv to launch their office out there 13 months into my tenure there, and haven't really looked back. I guess I've learned over my career that my niche is in sales leadership and in early stage venture capital backed leadership. I really like to join a business where founders have found product market fit, have been going to market either bootstrapped or with a bit of seed funding, have taken on a round of funding, and now it's kind of built a repeatable, predictable, scalable engine. I guess notable kind of success stories is probably Paddle, joining their kind of Series A sub 4 million, growing to around about 100 million in 4 years. The hairline says the rest of the story, but long story short, I'm back with the guys from Paddle here at GoodFit. A problem that came about that we were trying to solve at Paddle that turned into a product that is now really taking the market by storm and you know, selling go-to-market solution to go-to-market leaders like myself.
Amazing. So yeah, I'm losing the hair as well. I've not like lost all of it yet, but I am making progress, as you can tell. That startups though, right? It does definitely accelerate it for sure.
Who needs hair or sleep? Right, absolutely.
Exactly. When there's coffee and Red Bull and quotas. Yeah. Okay. So and I know like you've been like multiple CRO, SVP. So you've like done this like several times. So I think probably a good place for us to start is if you were to look back and think back on that journey you've been on, like what would you say are the most successful go-to-market motions that you have built? And what would you say is the ideal order of operations when teams kind of implement that, and kind of what are some of the sequences that they get wrong, would you say? Like maybe you could talk to listeners a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think there's two parts. One is I've joined several businesses where you're going in and, like I said, typically a round of finance has been raised. Speaking to the CEO and you say, okay, what's the plan for this year? And well, we're around about 2 or 3 million ARR now. We need to get to 15 million by the end of the year. Well, how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to hire 15 AEs, of course. I'm like, well, okay, that's cool, but actually, do we have a big enough market? Are we creating enough pipeline? Is our ACV telling us that we can feed these AEs enough for them to be productive and successful there? So that's relatively common. Paddle was the exception, to be fair, when I joined. And again, I think it gave me a really good grounding on what we're terming here at GoodFit, the front to back rather than back to front go to market. And I think actually this world has got a lot harder because I saw a fascinating statistic. In 2011, there were about 150 different sales and marketing tools. Today, there are about 15,000, and new ones obviously coming out of the woodwork every day as building software has become democratized and a lot easier to do. Yet, go-to-market is harder than ever. I think Ebster published a report that average attainment across reps is about 40%. Cost per lead is going up. So this abundance of tooling in the space has not made life easier for people to go to market, which is counterintuitive. And I think this ties into that back to front go to market, where people think about the tooling they might need, the messaging they might want to put in an email, maybe even the contact details of the people they want to contact as the starting point of their go to market, different strategies and experiments they're going to run, without really understanding the fundamentals of go to market, which is how many accounts are there in the world that I can sell to? What is my definition of ICP? And again, I think tooling has come a long way to help people here, but I think people are still a little bit, maybe there's inertia or fear, but the number of people that I talk to when I say define your ICP, and I have been at GoodFit long enough now to say I have now, as of yesterday, talked to 100 revenue leaders. 98%, because I've been keeping a record of this, 98% of revenue leaders I talk to cannot define their ICP beyond very, very top level firmographic and maybe slightly technographic data points. Industry, company size, location, and uses X technology. And I find that bonkers, if I'm being honest, because no two ICPs are the same amongst different companies. And then you've got different grades of ICP. So front to back is really this concept that we're really trying to promote here at GoodFit. We evangelize this to our customers who are adopting this, which is the first place you start is mapping your market. How many accounts are there that I can sell to? Then I'm going to want to understand what's the difference between a great account or a good account. And that will depend. You might have different definitions for your enterprise versus SMB segment, for your US market or EMEA market, for depending on what you're trying to optimize for. Is it win rates or increasing ACVs, etc.? And then you're going to want to make sure you enrich everything you need to know about these accounts so that you can identify, A, how do we score these accounts against all these data points, because each of these data points are relevant. But B, how then I can orchestrate and execute and what we call the execution layer. So these AI SDRs or cold calling platforms or programmatic outreach, whatever it might be, with the data points that you want. Don't get me wrong, I'm not diminishing the importance of this execution layer because, of course, you can't live in your CRM in order to start engaging prospects, but that's where it starts. Size, context, segmentation, and prioritization so that you can go to market effectively.
Yeah, spot on. There's probably a whole episode just in what you kind of said there. But one of the things I wrote down a couple of things, but one thing I guess we'll touch on first is I wrote down people, playbooks, skills, then technology. What you're saying there is basically what most people do. And I think we're in some of these same WhatsApp groups together, Adam, with other like go-to-market and revenue leaders. And the only questions I typically see in there is like, what mobile data platforms are you guys using? And should I move from SalesLoft to Gong? And I'm like, I don't think you're solving the right problem there. And it's interesting that we always default to let's bring in technology versus, hey, let's actually have a sit down with our leadership team and with our customer facing reps and be like, what are the patterns and trends that we're seeing in the market? I was vibe coding something last night where I can now, inside of Slack, I can just be like, hey, what's my market saying? And it goes to my call recordings, reads the transcripts over a specific period of time, and it tells me what the market's saying, so I can use that to inform marketing and sales and all of that kind of good stuff. And we typically get, I don't know if this kind of resonates with you, so maybe just kind of play back in a second, but when we kick off a program with new companies to run like a skill optimization program, we do like an ICP audit. So we're like, hey, who were the last 15, 20 customers that you signed? What were like the 3 whys, persona and medic across those deals? And then also from an expansion and a renewal, let's run that same process and then let's look at that data, audit it, and tell us what story that tells. So we actually have a good idea of like, where are we going to place our big bet? Otherwise, we might go and invest a lot of time, effort, and money in a persona in an industry that feels like the right thing, But if we're not successful, or it takes us 3 times as long to win those deals and win rates are lower in that segment, what is the point? Don't know
100%.
if that
And I
resonates.
think it really does. And I think the other point, I'm glad you said about not just which customers we've won, but the renewal and expansion piece, because I think the VC crash in 2022, 2021 really taught venture capital portfolio companies that growth at all costs is not a viable or sustainable motion. And if we hadn't learned the lesson then the SaaS, what's going on now in terms of SaaS valuations, gross margins, revenue per employee as a result of the AI boom, is teaching us about efficient growth. The problem is AI has also set expectations of 100% growth isn't good enough. So, everyone is now looking at 300% growth, especially if you're on the VC life cycle. You've got to do that with a burn ratio very, very efficient because you don't need as much resource. So getting this wrong is really, really painful today. Existential pain. It's not just, hey, we're going to have to drag this out a little bit longer, because it has become a lot more competitive. So when we're thinking about go-to-market, and it's a great example, you talked about contacts as kind of people's holy grail. I've never got my head around why anybody would give a tool to a rep to find a contact. I know that's the predominant play of all the vendors here, and this is no disrespect to them, but I've never understood why I'd want my reps spending time researching which personas and contacts to engage and finding their email, etc., as opposed to being able to serve this up directly to them with the right accounts, because I'm paying my reps to engage prospects and either build or win pipeline. Every minute that they are spending researching, they are not spending time engaging people. So when I think about our addressable market, I'm thinking about, let's say, 10,000 accounts that fit within our definition of ICP. If I'm not getting across those 10,000 accounts within the year, something is wrong. And that is probably going to be because my outreach team, my marketing team are not focused enough on who we should be targeting and how we can reach them, and spending time on things that tooling does solve for today and should be solving for very efficiently.
Yeah. You say it louder. Say it louder. Like when I was at Building Staff Circle, I got to a point where I was just like, why are my guys manually going into Zoom Info and Lusher and Sales Navigator? I just spun up an outsourced team over in APAC that was really cost effective, and they didn't just do the like account enrichment. They also did the like account hypothesis creation based on like we gave them a system and a framework to follow. So my reps just went into HubSpot. They went into the account. In that account was pinned at the top the hypothesis. All of the associated contacts were in there, and then we had the tiering system: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. My guys just were focused on execution. Exploded pipeline. I've now got in this business like virtual assistants that do certain things for me that are important but are not worth my time, because my time could be spent on bigger picture stuff. And I think again we've lost our way in go to market, where we're just like, let's just give these guys all of the talk. I was on a coaching call with a rep the other day, Adam, and I could barely see their Google search bar because it was littered with Chrome extensions. The whole organization is behind on pipeline and revenue.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think, again, it's almost that going back to basics piece. I think, and this is, I'm also a big fan of vibe coding. I'm, Lovable. I've actually given everyone in my commercial organization a Lovable credits. We're actually running our first sales hackathon, building some tooling that will help us create more efficiency. Not because I think we should be spending time doing this, but I do think everyone should be proficient in prompting and curious about solving problems for our business and our customers. But when I'm thinking about, I recently built a tool where when I'm speaking to prospects now, and I'm trying to diagnose pain, which is what we do in our first calls. We're trying to qualify if there's an opportunity and understand what the pain is and quantification or implication of that pain. It's a bit easier for me because I sell to revenue leaders, so I live and breathe that world. But revenue leaders care about making money and hitting their revenue goal. Ultimately, yes, maybe there's a cost and efficiency element there as well. And in B2B, as I keep telling my team, people buy things either to make more money, save money, or reduce risk, which is perhaps a derivative of saving money anyway. They don't buy it because they like it's a blue button or because it's AI. Even though so many people have a board mandate to bring AI into their tech stack, I'm like, so it does what? And I think we need to keep coming back to these fundamentals of, okay, and the context example is a really good example because I built this funnel metrics calculator where you start with how many accounts are there in my market? What are my conversion rates from accounts in terms of how many of my market I can get across and engage? How many get into initial calls? How many get into opportunities? Percentage win rate, ACV. And then I map that against my annual growth goal. And you can pivot any one of them. I mean, this is how we do annual planning anyway in Excel. I've done it for years. But you pivot to see what is the implication of an uplift of 0.5% in terms of accounts that I've been able to outreach to across my addressable market there. And it just brings it back home to say, why then would you want your reps spending 50% of their time outreaching if you could double the amount of accounts that you can outreach to, assuming everything else bottom of funnel stays the same? And it's just a stark notice of there is a dollar or pound or euro number associated with every distraction, and coming back to efficiency is one of the core fundamentals.
Yeah, 100%. Or even if they're just attacking the same number of accounts, the time that they're wasted doing that research, they can be in coaching conversations or on training courses or like mastering a critical selling skill so that they can improve the quality of execution, ultimately drive up. We got a customer that we recently published a case study with, and their revenue's up 45%, but their headcount stayed the same. In fact, I think it went down slightly just because we increased the skills in their revenue org. They were able to go out and do more revenue with the same capacity. Like, and
100%.
again, that should AI should be an enabler to support that stuff rather than, oh, we now have AI, so let's take the stuff that wasn't working before and let's just do 10 times the amount of it and just burn and piss and frustrate customers off, prospects off, ruin our brand.
I mean, it's also from the buyer perspective, and I am also a buyer. I get lots of people trying to sell me things. The expectation has gone up. I will, in fact, I was talking to someone the other day. You know what I really like in a cold email? I like a typo because it shows humanity. Whereas historically, a typo would have shown negligence. And I mean, it's funny how things come full cycle. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I think you're right. I think we're talking about these efficiency gains, but I'm not sure it does create efficiency. I mean, yes, you're able to do more, but the expectations rise with that. My boards want 350% growth this year. When I was running revenue at Paddle, it was 100% growth, and that was deemed best in class. So I guess it's like the advent of email, right? We're now going to be able to have so much more free time because we don't have to wait 3 days for a response, etc., to a letter. I can now email people around the world and get a response. Well, we all know what happened. Nobody got more free time. We got busier. And I think that's what this world is creating for us, heightened expectations. It is, again, there's a big piece around hiring the right people who have got that desire for growth, desire for learning, because again, it is much more able to be self-served now than ever before. And also, thinking about protecting ourselves, because I think it's really easier more than ever for people to burn out, people to be just going full throttle. And I think that's when management really has to iterate a little bit around, it's not necessarily always on me to be the coach every time, because there's so much better people and content out there who can deliver coaching to my team for their relevant skill. I've absolutely got to be involved and take ownership of it. But I'm a facilitator. I'm an enabler. I will signpost to the right people. I will give budgets. I will check in on it. But that's how we have to change our methodologies and our ways of working in line with the new world as well.
Yeah, 100%. And that kind of comes back into, the first thing I wrote down when you were kind of answering that first initial question is I wrote down, we have to get better at managing up. And then underneath I wrote down, and it's just a bit of a scar of mine, but I wrote down spreadsheet business. Anyone can build a business in a spreadsheet. Yeah, like sometimes when you're in a VC-backed business, and a lot of those VCs are financial analysts, they've never been in the trenches to understand the complexities and challenges that you and I have faced. Sometimes we have to be bold and brave to push back to the board or the VCs and actually manage up effectively and say, hey, I know you want to do this. I know you've read a blog on AI. I know you've seen there's an AI SDR. It takes more than just spend. If it was the case that I bought the same 6 tools as everybody else and spent £250,000 a year and we could grow revenue 100%, do you not think we'd have already done it? I'd have just raised 100 grand. I'd have put that money into it, kept the same sales team, and do you know what I mean? So I do see that as an issue as well. Is like being a good communicator and managing up effectively.
I do. Like, it comes back to the same point, which is more than ever, which is hiring the right people. making sure that really you are very, very clear on who you want to hire. I never know whether to boast about it or to cry about it, but our acceptance rate of account executives here at GoodFit to offer, from screening to offer, I mean, I'm not going to share the metric. It's ridiculously low. And, you know, again, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe we're not great at sourcing. Maybe we're not, but I'm holding out for a certain type of person because I know what type of person is going to be successful here. And yes, I'm slightly behind on my hiring plan. I'm slightly behind. If I don't hit that, there's a capacity gap between quota and what I've got in seat today. But having the right mindset, who really is curious, who wants to grow and learn, who thinks about things in a different mindset to everyone else, that's the differentiator today. Because to your point, tooling is homogenous. It's the same email I get, just lots more of them selling me leads and meetings and opportunities and events and whatnot. So yeah, I'm looking for that difference. And I think buyers are too. They're looking for that human. They're looking for that human who really sits and understands. And I'm not saying AI doesn't have a place. Of course it does. It can make me more effective. It can make me more impactful. It can make me more efficient, but it's certainly not going to replace me, because until I see otherwise, humans are still very much looking for a human to help them make sense of this world.
Yeah, I agree. We're talking about how to, what's the separation between winners and losers. And, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, Adam, like having a low, conversion rate in that area, because you should want to build a team of excellence. Again, we spun up a new customer in December, and I met up with the CEO when we were running through the business case. And, he was talking about, we need to start to become really professional in go to market. We actually need to start taking this thing really seriously, like setting standards and actually not going below those because of some desperation. So there is a lot of noise out there. Unfortunately, there is a lot of people that will say they're curious, and then as I'm scoring them in a characteristics or like an interview, like, you've not asked me one interesting question. You've not come with any interesting point of view and dug a little bit deeper when I've asked you a question or I've said something. So yeah, I think that rings true a lot. You actually also said something here as well, and I wrote down 15K marketing tools. Actually, it's so funny how aligned we are. When I kick off the competition module of our medic deployment, there's actually a slide, I think it's like slide 4, and I use it to explain to the account executives that you might have 2 or 3 direct competitors if you're in the marketing tech space. And then I've got that MarTech map. You've probably seen it, where there's like 1 billion little logos. You can't even see them. I'm like, although there's 3 direct competitors that sell what you sell, there's also like 15,260 or whatever the number is, other AEs at marketing tech companies or services or PR agencies or whatever it is that are also trying to eat into the VP of marketing's budget. And all it takes is for somebody to build a better champion or more compelling business case that talks to business outcomes than you do. And unfortunately, although your thing might sound great, their thing looks better in the boardroom. So it's about really having that playbook. When you're talking about those sequences and things like that. You said people. I wrote down playbook. I talk about like a production line in a BMW factory. At one end you've got car parts. Next end you've got a black M5. And there's all the moving parts on that production line to get to that state. If we think about go-to-market, if we think about our revenue org, at one end we've got a bunch of ideas, a playbook, a product, our demo scripts, whatever it is. At the end we've got a close one customer. Those are the moving parts, and those teams 100%. That build great motors that people spend a lot of money on, they are well-oiled, well-trained, well-coached. They've got the right tools, and they're not just tools like mental tools, right?
And I don't think that's any different to the way it has been. I mean, I've always thought about the chronology of scaling in an organization, right? If I want to get to a scalable, if I want to scale with confidence, in order to do that, I first need to be predictable. I need to know that an investment at the top, be that a human, a campaign, an email, whatever it is, will yield something that I am within a realm of acceptability, aware of what it will be. But in order to get to predictability, I need to be repeatable. I'm not talking about homogenous. I'm talking about a process that everyone follows the same steps and playbook, to your point there. And again, I think back to front, or winners versus losers, we're going to scale by hiring 30 AEs. Well, I'm like, have you got a repeatable, predictable process? Do you know your funnel metrics? Do you know if you send 1,000 emails out, what will yield from there? And if you don't know the answer, then you're not ready to scale. Or you're taking a lot of risk with scale, and AI won't fix that for you. You've got to get those fundamentals right, and both in terms of process, but back to where GoodFit really kind of comes into its fore is back to knowing your market and really deeply knowing your market, and where AI, like the machine learning GoodFit does, really helps people here is to start being very, very granular and specific. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Chili Piper, a great client of ours. I'm sure they won't mind me talking about them. When we started working with them a couple of years ago, they defined their ICP very similar to how other people did. They talked about North America and EMEA. They talked about, I can't remember the number, 100 to 2,000 employees and certain industry exclusions. And they thought they had a serviceable market of 300,000 accounts. Whoopee. We did the analysis and we looked at what was qualified versus disqualified, what was won versus lost, and we came up with a whole bunch of criteria that was way more granular. So, for example, their prospects needed to have a sales team of 10 or more. They needed to have a call to action on their website, like speak to sales, request a demo. They needed to have monthly website traffic of 50,000. They needed to be using either HubSpot or Salesforce CRM. What that yielded was actually a market size of 14,000 versus 300,000. And there was a shock value there, which is, oh crap, our market's way smaller. What are we going to tell the investors? I'm like, no, this is great news. Excuse my shoddy maths, but 14 out of 300,000, I think, is 1 out of 22. The ultimate response was, that means 21 out of 22 opportunities you were in last year were never going to win. The hiring plan you've built against the market of 300,000 is inflated. And so having this focus, and excuse the cliche, but coming at the market with a sniper rifle like a machine gun is the opportunity that you have today. But if you're not taking the time to get deep and granular and focus on where we win, where we're really good, what is qualified, what is disqualified, and how we optimize for our highest propensity accounts there, it's all very well having these signal tools that tell you somebody's on your website or somebody's moved jobs or whatever it might be. But if they're the wrong account in the first place, it's not helpful. So we always start with your market, and then you layer on top of that the signals, the insights, the contacts and personas, and the execution go-to-market processes.
So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistance. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills. And it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money, and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to the revenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions. Yeah, it's spot on. And I guess like you guys have built the capability in a way from the way that I'm thinking about this, but also like just out the box and curiosity. Like when I was building Staff Circle, it unfortunately took a little bit too long to find this out. When we did, it was a bit of a cheat code, but what we were selling performance management software, employee engagement software, so the VP of HR could spot gaps and risk in their organization and mitigate that. Maybe they could see that this person looks like somebody that could potentially resign or leave our business because of managers aren't having good one-on-ones, or they're not in regular development conversations, or they're no longer engaging with content in our business, which is a typical indicator they might leave. So we found over time that most HR organizations are usually under-resourced, and they're usually the last kind of department in the business that gets great technology. So we found that if we went to Sales Navigator and we looked at the org kind of department structure pie chart that you can see, we would typically find if HR sat between a specific percentage range of the overall org headcount, we were going to be more successful. if you think about this from like a sales enablement perspective, if I was selling sales enablement software, if I could see that they had, let's say, more than 4% of the org was in sales enablement, they're probably making a significant investment in sales enablement headcount, so I'm more likely to break through. In my business now, I look for things that I can't usually plug into in most cases. You might tell me if I'm maybe not looking in the right places. The most tools I try to use, I'm looking for really poor ratio between manager and rep. If I can see that there's 2 sales leaders and 22 sales reps in that organization, I know because I've been there, they are going to struggle to find the time, have the capacity and capability to run really thorough like skills audits, create cohorts, design programs, and execute those programs to close those skill gaps and drive impact. So I look for that as a signal, not so much what industry they're in, because I've just found, again, I don't know if you resonate with Adam, the playbook typically works wherever you go. You've got to tweak it a little bit for the company's context. I'm looking for, why can this person or this organization not solve this problem without me? My win rate is monstrous compared to the others when that isn't the case. So I just look for it. But you've got to be curious to think outside the box and what should I look for?
I agree. I absolutely agree. Again, it was like my a Payroll, which is an employer of record, like Deal, Remote, Oyster. Many of them became very, very big in COVID. Payroll's a great company. It's a bootstrap company. It's actually, I became a customer of GoodFit there after I left Paddle and brought GoodFit in. But if you think about the employer of record space, it's a really interesting market. There's about 2.5 million companies that could use an employer of record solution. And again, I think this is where people get very confused between your TAM, your SAM, and your SOM. Your TAM is your 2.5 million companies. They are people who could buy an employer of record. You've got your SAM, who are people who are, or companies who are likely to buy an employer of record solution. And then you've got your SOM, which is companies that are likely to buy my employer of record solution. And you've got to understand exactly what it is about that SOM versus that SAM in terms of where you're going to dedicate that resource. And industry, employee count, and location is not that tool. So again, being where we play, we typically don't sell here at GoodFit to anyone with less than 5 people in their go-to-market team. Not because we can't help them, but where we make the biggest impact is where you already have an existing go-to-market motion. Why? Because we look at your historic data and say, how do we find you more of the same? We can, in full candor, we can help smaller businesses, but our cost to service them is as much as it is a larger client, and they're more likely to go out of business, etc. So it's, whilst we'd love to, it's not economically feasible to do so. But having that track record of, we've been trading, we've had pipeline for a certain number of months, years, etc. And we're really trying to optimize for mapping our market, identifying every account we can sell to. And what's amazing when we sell GoodFit is, again, 9 times out of 10, people think they know every company in their market, and we will always surprise them and say, we found you an extra 10, 20, 30% more companies who fit within your definition, but now what? And I think the other part is thinking about your go-to-market motions. Think about, not every company should be having the same investment. Consider an ABM type approach, which has got a much higher cost per lead, a much higher CAC, much more resource invested in it, versus a programmatic outreach at scale motion, which is effectively free apart from the tooling that you're using and the resource you're employing to manage that. How do you know which account should be going into which motion? Again, people look at employee count or public revenue figures, but that's not necessarily the case. Yeah. So data is the starting point of your go-to-market. And when I say data, it is not mobile phone numbers in Scandinavia. It is knowing your market and understanding everything and everyone in it.
Yeah. So when you see the same messages in this couple of WhatsApp groups that you probably know what I'm talking about, you probably headbutt the wall just as often as I do, because they're just, look, I need to get phone numbers for these 2.5 million companies, versus what I'm hearing, which aligns with my world, is I need to know who are those companies where they could buy from anybody else, but they probably won't, because everybody else won't customize the training content and won't run reinforcement, because that's not their offer. But that's my offer, and that's why my customers are wildly successful. So that's why they'll buy from me. I just need to
Yeah.
identify who are the companies that have really poor manager to rep ratios, who
Right.
are under resourced.
Or potentially are hiring people who have invested in managing solutions in the past, who talk about coaching and developing A-star players as part of their playbook, or who have reviews on Glassdoor or RepView about the poor culture there. I don't know. The point is, your past customers, your past wins will inform that. If you've got the data and the database against which to project that data, you will surface what your best looking prospects look like. Now, again, it's very different depending on your scale and your ambitions. If you are a 300% year on year growth business and that's what you're trying to do, that's only part of the puzzle. Because knowing your market is great, understanding how many accounts there are in your market and choosing your best accounts is wonderful, but you also have to make sure you are growing at the rate that you need to be growing in order to hit your next funding round or don't run out of money, whatever it might be. And so again, you've got to have those full funnel metrics above the line in terms of revenue and below the line in terms of cost awareness, so that you can understand how, as you said it when you talk to your investors, when you're in the trenches, and understand how everything is connected. It is all connected. People, process, playbooks, planning, costs, revenue. It is, you pull up that thread and it all unravels, or it all starts to be connected. So having your finger on the pulse across all of that and understanding is going to be so key. And that fundamentally is what's going to separate the winners from the losers in this market.
Yeah, I agree. I guess shifting gears here, but I talk to like some sales leaders and they're like, James, I know my rep should be doing deeper research and like customizing and personalizing emails, outbound videos, direct mail letters, whatever it might be, cold calls. I just can't risk, turning that all down and making that move if it doesn't work out. And we all know it's the right thing to do, but they just avoid doing it. So I kind of think this is aligned to my next question for you. But when you think about like an account or at the account level of a prospecting campaign or a sales motion, how do you, or what's best practice from your perspective on like balancing the timing versus the fit? And then maybe a follow-up question to that, and feel free to answer it in the same way. But what are some of the signals that you and your team or you see customers are looking out for to know when to lean in or when to walk away, even if that account on paper looks perfect based on their industry size and
Totally.
location?
And I think it is a matrix of the two. If you think about account fit and timing as two separate elements of a matrix there, you can have the best accounts in the world, best fit accounts, but the timing sucks. You're not going to sell anything. You might have terrible account, but great timing or great signals. And if you're lucky, you might sell, but inevitably you're going to churn, or your CTO is going to be super annoyed at you because they're having to pivot the entire roadmap to satisfy these clients there. So you want to be top right of that matrix. You want to find the best accounts with the right timing. So, and this is how we think about this. We're not, there's a lot of signals tools out there. Some very legacy ones, some newer ones, etc. But ultimately, and we hear actually in the market, a lot of people, very unhappy with their signals tools. Some of these cost mid to high six figures. And the reality is, I'm thinking as they're saying this, what accounts are you running signals against? Because if your signals tools are determining which accounts you should be going after, that's back to front. So again, the way we work here at GoodFit, and we're not a rep tool, we work underneath the CRM. We will, it's lovely because I actually think we should be charging for this because people will pay a fortune. But the first thing we do is we clean up your CRM. We dedupe your accounts. We make sure there are only accounts in your market there. We enrich them with all the data points, both account and contact level, that you need in terms of being able to determine which accounts are a priority, including our own GoodFit score based on the objective you're trying to do. And then you run your signals against those accounts. You talk about, hey, this one's on our website, this one's signed up for an event somewhere, this one's on G2, whatever it might be. And then on top of that, and this all comes from your CRM, because if your CRM is clean and usable, I believe it is a good source of truth, both for marketing and for sales. The problem is no one's got a clean CRM. No one trusts their CRM. Stuff goes out of date every single month. I mean, I look at GoodFit's ICP. It's really interesting because, of course, we use GoodFit for GoodFit. 8% new accounts enter our ICP definition every single month. Every single month. And I'm like, I no go-to-market motion, no market definition remains static. So of course your CRM goes out of date. So
Yeah.
we make sure that integration with Good Fit is with the CRM. And from there, once you've got a CRM you can trust, segmented by the right teams, motions, go-to-market, etc., can you deploy your signals? Can you deploy your AI researchers? Can you deploy your AI SDRs and your cold call agents, whatever it might be?
Yeah, agree. It reminds me of back in 2017, I was an AE selling an ABM product that allowed companies to run programmatic to what you're saying, the right accounts. And that was part of our kind of value story is, and we're talking like large enterprise, like HP, like big organizations like that, Salesforce of this world. And we were kind of almost like, look, it really doesn't matter how good that compelling, powerful message is on that banner, or the outbound email, or the skills of the sales rep. If that account is not a good fit, you are going to be sat there spinning your wheels, burning a load of money on marketing and sales and RevOps and all of these kind of, everything can go to market, and the conversion rate is going to be so low because that account is not a good fit either in general or right now. Like, even if I pull it up now, even in my HubSpot instance, I still use this today and I've used it across all of my teams at the account level. And this is probably going to be like super basic from what you guys do, Adam. But I have the very first field in the account reads like this: why does this account need to meet us now? And why and now are in capitals. And it forces me to do my research and come up with that point of view. Why should this company spend time with us? And why should they do it now? What's happening in their business that's forcing them to need that? Is it poor manager to rep ratio? Is it they're recruiting for a bunch of people and there's in the job description, it says, this is going to be our first enterprise sales rep. So we're going to need somebody that has that experience. I'm thinking about, that's the first time you're doing it, going from SMB to enterprises. That's some battle, right? So I use this in my point of view, so that when I reach out to people, it's just the connection's there and the conversion is significant.
That's exactly right. You're finding the balance between right account and right signal. And I think that's the key is, to really understand that and not be led by one or the other, is trying to find that holy grail between the two.
Yeah. All right. So as we kind of get closer wrapping here, talk to me about, like, because I do agree with you, by the way, things are changing all of the time. So as a sales leader or as go-to-market leader, you have to keep your ear close to the ground. I used to always be in Gong and like pulling transcripts and listening to what's changing and the types of accounts and stuff. So I totally agree with you there. So talk to the listeners about like what new headwinds are you seeing for startup scale-ups, and how do you think go-to-market leaders should adapt and maybe change their strategy to keep the revenue org winning when other orgs are not doing this? They're standing still and then they start to really struggle and start to lose.
Yeah. I think the one word is focus. It's so easy to be caught up in the wave of excitement, of innovation, everyone on LinkedIn today has unlocked the mysteries of pipeline generation and efficiency. And yet you hear everyone who's deployed AI solutions in their go-to-market stack can't determine an ROI. So I think it's about focus on yourself, focus on your market, focus on your go-to-market, focus on the people and what makes a great AE. Again, you think about revenue leaders define what makes a great AE, and I'm hiring for sales managers now, and I ask them what makes a great AE, and they can't define it. And I think that's crazy. You should be able to define and test for it. But don't, I'm not saying don't adopt technology. It is important. It is going to help you become more efficient if deployed correctly. But, be very, very considered in what you're doing and when you're doing, because if you're just trying stuff because somebody on LinkedIn told you they can increase your reply rate by 3,000%, great, but make sure that you're taking that into a considered test as well. So back to fundamentals: repeatability, predictability, scalability, front to back rather than back to front. That means growth isn't just about the number of reps you can get on board. It's got to be feasible in terms of your bottoms up planning as well. And make sure that you are exceptionally focused on who you are selling to and why you are selling to them, so that you can make sure that you've got an efficient motion there as well.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know about you, but I write my goals down every single day for focus. not because I forget them, because it keeps me focused. A bit of a shameless plug, but I guess it's my podcast, so I'll do it. Last year, I built these daily planners called Hit Your Numbers, and it's a planner that you basically, at the beginning of the quarter, you write down your primary goal, what your action plan is, and then there's just coaching guide it. Then you have a secondary goal, and then every day you open it up Monday. So and this is built for full cycle A's, for example. So the top of Monday it says, what are my pipeline goals today? And I've got 5 areas I can write down based on my data, based on me as a rep in this business. So based on my context, I need to I'm making this up, 70 cold calls a day. That's going to get me 1 meeting a day. I need to send 15 emails. That's going to get me 2 replies. Right. So I'm writing down, what do I need to do to keep that focus? And then afterwards, cool, next part is around pipeline. I need to also build, but then advance that pipeline. What are the critical deals? And what do I need to do today to advance those deals? And you do it every day. And at the end of every week, it then asks you, let's reflect. How did that go? Where did I miss the mark? Where did I drop the ball? What did I learn? What can I improve next week? And some people are looking for the big fancy revenue intelligence tool or digital sales room. And I'm like, if you just give your people, it doesn't even have to be this. It could just be a template in Google Docs that they fill out every day and just keeps them focused on what matters, their OKRs or whatever it is. You'll be amazed that by writing it down, and this is where I don't like note takers that much, I like to write stuff down because I don't know about you, when I write it down, it feels like it goes in more. A lot of people are recording calls now and pushing the context of that call into a medic field and letting technology update it. I mean, what's going on? Why can't a seller look at that and go, there's risk here and here and here. If I don't mitigate that, that deal's going to stall. It's going to slip. I could lose this one to status quo. I want to be able to see that. We're trying to automate everything.
I agree.
We're losing our way with it.
I agree. I think at the same time, having that ability to look at larger data sets en masse and have that quality is important. But I agree. I mean, I still run a couple of deals here and there myself, and I listen back to every call. I make notes in every call. I plan ahead of every call. And I love your idea about planning. I don't necessarily set my goals daily. I think I will credit Pete Crosby, my long-term coach at Revelesco, who's kind of once advised me, write a letter to the board dated 12 months from now, looking back and saying it was a great year because, and you cannot have your KPIs. Now, of course, KPIs are an indicator, but why else was it a great year? And I think this goes back into that personal fulfillment space as well, about we've got to enjoy our jobs. We've got to be working towards something beyond the targets. I think goal setting is an incredibly important part in this ever complex world.
Yeah, I love that exercise. That's a really, really good one. It forces you to think outside of the KPIs. One of the things that you might write in there is we really leveled up our enterprise AEs this year. They now can self-source pipeline and don't rely on marketing or SDRs anymore. Or like you said earlier, Van, your conversion rate from inbound candidate to offer, we were strict enough to maintain whatever it was, 8%. I don't know what your number is, right? But we were strict enough to maintain that, which forced us to maintain a level of excellence in our revenue org, which creates winners versus losers, right? And that's the important part.
And that comes back to that focus piece again. What does great look like across everything that you're doing? Whether you do that manifested as daily goals, whether it's quarterly goals like we do here at a Good Fit, or it's that annual goal. I agree. Having that vision and not getting distracted. I mean, one of the things that I've been taught to do is I delete every event in my calendar on a quarterly basis and start again, because I have a tendency to say yes to everything. I want to be involved in everything. I want to learn everything. How much of it is really essential and what's losing as a result of me being in meetings?
Yeah, I love that. Nick said that. We interviewed Nick on the podcast. He's an SVP of sales, and he said with his all the different layers of management and reps at the beginning of the quarter, they work backwards in their calendars and build in deal reviews, coaching sessions and rhythms and things like that. And at the beginning of the next quarter, they do the same again. Otherwise, like you said, you just have to build in this cadence of activities or events, and actually sometimes you need to course correct or completely wipe that out. And I guess that comes back to ICP, because sometimes it can change because the market changes, your business evolves and becomes maybe enterprise ready, so that all shifts, which means there's different signals and complexities and things like that. So you got to keep your ear close to the ground and stay focused. So yeah, world class. Love this episode. We could probably talk forever, Adam, no doubt, but I know you're a super busy man and probably got a call in 6 minutes. So just selfish plug for you then. So where can people find you, check out more about the business, what it is that you guys do in a bit more detail? What kind of next steps would you recommend for people listening?
Totally. Come visit us at our website, goodfit.io, or contact me. Feel free. I always like being outreached to on LinkedIn. Adam Kay, very, very simple, 7-letter full name. But if anyone wants to learn more about front to back rather than back to front go to market, always happy to have these conversations. One of my favorite things about working at Good Fit that I've never had before in my career is I am now working in an industry that I am authentically and genuinely passionate about. So I will geek out on this stuff whenever you want.
Yeah, I feel the same. I've sold lots of different industries, but man, I love what we do now. So yeah, very aligned there. And if you're listening, you can probably get a sense that Adam genuinely knows his stuff. He's not asking ChatGPT to do his homework. So highly recommend go follow him, have a chat with him, and also like anything that you took away from the session, just drop him a note. I'm sure Adam would want to hear from you and learn what you learned from the session. But yeah, until next time, we'll see you on the next episode of Hit Your Numbers. And Adam, thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Thanks, James. Really enjoyed it.
All right, thanks for listening to this episode. I've got something else I want to give you before we wrap up here. So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistance. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills. And it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money, and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to therevenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions.